I'm calling from Los Angeles, and I'm having a little problem under the name ThatUmbrellaGuy. I sent him my phone number at least 20 times in the chat and told him to call me. He ignored me. I'm a man. I filed the report. If you guys could take a look at it and give me a call back, I would love to hear what you guys can do to help us. We really need to kind of stop this guy at least until Monday. I told him to call me. I'm a man.
All right, how's it going? Took me a hot minute to get in here, actually. It was like, you could have a totally quiet day. No one else hits you up, but 10 minutes before a live stream, it's like everybody and their mother starts calling and texting and everything else. I was like, good God, man. How's everybody doing today? A lot of stuff's been happening the last few days. I mean, we get some new Rekieta stuff, like court-wise stuff. We actually get Gina Carano. We have that move towards something. We have the Bouzy betrayal. So sad. So sad. Oh, so many interesting things. And I'm sure like 50 other things popped off as well. But those were at least entertaining. Give me 1 minute. I'm pulling up something here. I'm looking for the Bouzy thing was actually really funny. Seeing everybody, these are people that circled the wagons on everything from Meghan Markle, Amber Heard, all of that. These are people that try to ruin folks' lives, and now the media has turned on them completely. It's been amazing to watch, to be honest. It seems to always happen that way. I kind of love that, because this is a guy that tried to, if people don't know who he is, this is a guy who tried to build a company on the back of going after anyone he could. And yeah, it doesn't seem to have worked out very well. It seems like that belly flopped for him. And I would feel bad for him, but I don't. Give me 1 minute. There it is. I was looking for the screenshots on that. It's just been kind of funny because he's been turned on by every form of media out there. The Rekieta stuff's interesting too. He did actually get a lawyer, which was a speculatory thing. We were all speculating on. He said he was going to get a lawyer, like anybody with half a brain would do that, but yeah, I finally got one. Now I'm wondering, I don't know, this is just a curiosity here. I'm wondering, I cut out the middle. This had all the information to who this was and everything else. I'm wondering with this, are they going to handle, okay, you have the case itself, but you also have what's going on with, potentially with CBS. And I wonder if they're going to handle these things separately. If you're going to bring in your own lawyer for it. Like a lot of times people do, if they're going to, how they're going to approach that. Because when you're dealing with CPS, you have to make sure, especially if you plan on I'm going to say exploring your options. And you got to be real careful with that. So I've really wondered when they brought people in, like this guy here. I wonder if he's geared for handling CPS. If he has good background with that, you have to. I'm telling you, the biggest mistake would be underestimate. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I know it from the other side of that. So lawyers love to ignore, like when you're yelling about, hey, I realize you deal with that, but you know what? We do too. And if you can't fight them, if you screw up in some way on that, they will punish you for it, and they will hit you hard. So anyway, we got our notice here, our certificate of representation, telling us that Francis Whitelaw, that sounds, I don't know. Like when I read it together, I was like, wait a minute, Whitelaw? That's just how it rolls off the tongue. Whitelaw. Hereby represents in the above referenced defendant on the following, all violations associated. Like I said, I wonder how I wonder his background on the whole CPS thing. I don't know if anybody's looked in that. White Claw. That would be really bad. Francis White Claw. It's like, no. By the way, I got asked about this. So Nick has been doing local streams. Somebody was like, hey, cover that. And I was like, I don't want to cover every one of them. I'm glad he's he can do his own thing or whatever, but I covered the first one. I talked about what was there because I was curious how things would or wouldn't be. He's been doing local streams. Now he hasn't been doing YouTube yet. YouTube is where the real craziness will come in. Or Rumble. Rumble will be where the real craziness comes in too, but I don't want to cover every stream. I don't know, man. So I wish I hope he gets everything straightened out. There's but phew, man. I keep thinking, my God, like you said the wrong thing, thing like that, they will use it against you. So it's a delicate balance. But this stuff is different. That's my point. So this was actually filed a couple of days ago. I saw it come up a couple of days ago. And there's a document basically asking for everything. Like, it's kind of fascinating. This is kind of what you expect when you're going forward to this. What cards do you have? Like, how exactly did you get to everything? Can I enlarge that, please? Yeah, thank you. Give me 1 second. Yeah, sorry about that. Let me enlarge there. How's that? That should be better. Yeah, sorry about that. If I forget to do that, mention it. Thank you. But here, the state of versus Nick Rekieta. Defendant's demand for disclosure. Essentially, show me everything that you've got. Now, I do really wonder, from some of the things that I've heard in locals live streams and looking at this, if this is a plan on fighting the state, trying to fight them at every turn. And again, I'm not a lawyer. I just, good luck. Good luck with that. Because, man, yeah, you can beat them sometimes. There was a lot of live streamed goodies, though, they used for probables. And, well, we'll see. I guess we'll see how that plays out. But let's read this over. 2. The state of Minnesota and its attorneys, pursuant to Rule 9 of the Minnesota Rules of Criminal Procedure, the defendant, through the undersigned attorney, demands that the state of Minnesota forthwith make the following written disclosures prior to such time the defendant is required to waive or demand a hearing on the issue of probable cause. So, asking for everything that they've got. First of all, the names and addresses of all of those people that the state intends to call as witnesses. Now that, I think that would say a lot too, you know? Like if there's certain names, because there's been a lot of speculation on what other parties are or aren't doing. You know, certain parties that were arrested. And it would be really fascinating to see what the state has. It would also answer a couple of questions like the Aaron Einholt thing, for example. There was a lot of speculation about him potentially have making contact with the police, which he denies, by the way. But with this document, you'd find out, number one, if they planned on, if they used him as a source in any way, shape, or form. And number two, if they planned on calling him or other people that were involved as witnesses. Plus, those other anonymous sources. Yeah. Now, see, here's where there's an interesting deviation from like a CPS report. You know, one of the anonymous source claims was child neglect. And with child neglect, if you were to call into a CPS hotline, like say these people would have called that in there instead, they would have been able to report anonymously. So they would have never been able, if they would have made anonymous reports like that, they would have never been able to look it up. But them going to the police, it opens it up totally differently. But NCIC and BCA printouts, other records of charges and convictions for witnesses disclosed by the state. So, we want to know everything about your witnesses, period. We want to know, anything that's ever happened with them. We know their background, charges, convictions. Again, typical. You want every single thing. Any of the following statements known to the prosecutor that relate to the case, whether or not the person who made the statement is listed as a witness. So, that's interesting. Whether or not you're going to call them. We want to know about written or recorded statements. We want to know about written summaries of oral statements and the substance of oral statements. So whether or not you plan on using those in court, we actually want to know what exists. I'd be curious what all gets turned over with that. Like I said, I really would like to, just curiosity-wise, I'd like to know, again, there was so much made of for anonymous, because, again, speculation, there was so much of it. There was also a lot of stuff that was wanted, people wanted to know about the third arrested party, like them being let go. Although there was a podcast. I said podcast. There was a show. I've been watching so much of this stuff and reading documentation. They always refer to YouTube shows as podcasts. So I've gotten this habit of calling them podcasts. And I'm like, wait a minute, no, that's not really a podcast. There was a show though with Aaron Einholt and what was her name? Keanu something. I don't remember her last name. I don't know any of these people. So it didn't. The reason I mention this though, there's a point to it. That person was like a really good friend of April's, and apparently Nick Rekieta wrote her quite a few items, and as part of that, he had, at least the way that they had taken. Again, I couldn't see what was being asked right there, but according to what was being read, they were saying, he's kind of taking credit for her not being arrested, because, she's just a visitor in the home. There was a lot of discussion, though, in that. There's clips of that all over the place, by the way, But there was an interesting exchange there. I thought that was kind of fascinating, too, considering she was like, I don't know Rekieta Law at all. I don't know this guy. Not really. I know April, but there were a few fascinating things in that, and that led to talks back and forth, and it kind of revitalized a lot of this conversation that people were having about that third party, about the quote unquote live in or visit nanny, as was described. There's been instead of just focusing on something like this, I mean, there's that discussion's still going to be going on, but it breathed new life and made people look at a bunch of that again. So, number 4, the names and addresses of the witnesses, if any, who have testified before a grand jury in the case against the defendant. So, yeah, you find out about any kind of sealed hearings. You find out if anybody's actually been called, what exactly is going on behind the scenes. That's what they're trying to do with that too. Names and addresses of persons having information relating to the case. Now with that, again, anyone that you've relied on, it goes back to the, like I said, this is expected. You kind of, you want to look at what cards are being held, but it's always fascinating to go through and see everything that's listed. Like I said, recorded statements made by the defendant, co-defendant, and or accomplices, whether before or after arrest, pursuant to State versus Scales. So any recorded material that you have at all. Now, there was the note of recorded material, by the way. Rekieta made statements to the police, and in that one report of exactly what happened, they said that would be reviewable. All that items, that stuff would indeed be reviewable. So it is. So there is indeed recorded statements by defendant, co-defendants. You would think there might be some there. Again, not really sure. It didn't make a note of that specifically. Also, with talking, we know there were conversations with people related to DHS, because that was noted in the summary in the aftermath. So, there all recorded audio and video statements made by the alleged mandatory reporter. Like, that's kind of interesting. A lot of times, unless there's a bigger place, like some places, like here, for example, I don't know how they treat a mandatory reporter when you sit down. In some jurisdictions, though, they'll sit down and they'll record the entirety of a statement that is made. But when you get into small towns, it's like all the rules go out the window. All the things that you expect under the law, whether that be body cam or whether it be something else, yeah, that may or may not exist. You never know. But there may actually be a recorded audio or video. So it might not just be names and references and everything that's written down, but there may be more, because when the detective, like what we saw highlights of certain things that were stated. I mean, is there more? Typically there is. And they can judge a lot more by it, too. Plus, they would know exactly who the person is, too. All recorded audio and video statements made by any witnesses, so that's anybody outside. All body cam footage relevant to the case made by any law enforcement officer. Now, this was interesting. I was looking at a transcript of why. Give me 1 minute. Let me see if I can find this real fast. Oh, I've got a kid bringing me something. Give me 1 minute. Here. Is that a yoo-hoo?
Yeah, that's a yoo-hoo.
Yeah, you like the yoo-hoo?
Are you talking about that because you wearing headphones?
Yeah, well, now I've got the headphones on. All right, here, take that upstairs. Do me a favor and close that door for me, too, okay?
Why?
Why? Because it gets loud upstairs sometimes. I can't hear everything, okay? Thank you.
Love you.
Love you, too. Thank you. Give me 1 minute. I'm pulling up something, too. So there was a discussion about why body cam footage costs as much as it does. You know, and a lot of the $3,000. So there were people talking about getting hold of body cam footage. You know, they were saying it was going to cost $3,000, and it does, of course. It actually does. That's correct. But most of the reasoning that is written out has to do with scrubbing out kids' faces. Because they charge I think it was like $60 per, I forget. Again, I'd have to review that. I was looking to see if I could find it really easily. Because there was a transcript. There's a video, though, of all of that on YouTube. But yeah, most of the cost, it's related to scrubbing any kids' faces out of the body cam footage. They go through, but they charged like, I think it was like $60 per, I forget how. I was thinking, my Lord, that's a lot of money, you know, when you get down to it. And that added cost, I mean, that's quite a bit of cost. Give me 1 minute. I think I see it. I'm looking for that real fast. There it is. All right. Yeah, so there was a Paula Mooney that had a conversation with somebody from KCSO Records. And this is how it went there. I don't know what clips I'm going to put in here. This is from Paula Mooney. But first, let me let you listen to a phone call in Minnesota where I can confirm the body cam footage will cost $3,000. You have reached the law enforcement center there. Listen carefully to menu options, blah, blah, blah. So they end up talking to a person. And when they do, they tell them, okay, so they've got to do redactions. They talked about redactions because of juveniles involved. It said, hi, my name's Paula Mooney. I'm from Plunder True Crime Media Company. I'm attempting to get body cam footage of the arrest of Nicholas Rekieta. Now, the person from Records is like, okay, I can tell you right now because it's still an active open investigation. Body cam, they're going to have to redact because there were juveniles involved. Yeah. And anyway, their fee for redaction is $60 an hour. So the person from Records said, and the fee estimated there was going to be about 50 hours of redaction. It's like, holy crap, 50 hours there. Wow. So, you know, or of his time. Okay. So at this point, you can request it, but it's going to, like I said, take 10 business days before we can get anything, and it will be approximately $3,000. Okay, and they said for the reduction, and said, yeah, that's because there's so much body cam for it, you know, because you have a lot of officers involved. So every time, you know, if you're requesting all body cam footage, you have to scrub it out of every one of them. So that $3,000, you know, there was discussion about why this would cost so much. Well, there's your answer. Apparently they did make contact. They did ask about that. And again, it's for scrubbing minors out of everything. Yeah, Kiwi raised. Yeah, I saw they raised all the money. It's just, you know, with the $3,000, I was curious about the why. You know, why $3,000 again? You know, why exactly is that going on? Well, there's your answer. I'm gonna let my cigar. Give me a second. So I thought that little piece of information was kind of fascinating. So all body cam footage. Now again, you know, for this request, obviously it's, you know, that's different there. But also all dash cam footage. You know, you have the initial stop. That I would say would have dash cam footage along with. You know, you're going to have vehicles that pull up. But vehicles that pull up, I mean, really, maybe they catch something, maybe they don't. You know, that still would be added for something to go over. But that initial stop footage, there may actually be stuff that's on there that, you know, again, is, who knows? There may be something relevant on there. So that's part of their request too. I was thinking about, again, I mentioned that because I was trying to think of all the sources that we've had mentioned. There's a lot. There's quite a few. Any and all video and audio, books, grand jury minutes or transcripts, law enforcement officer reports, reports on prospective jurors, papers, documents, photos, and tangible objects which relate to the case. So pretty much anything at all that could have been written down. Plus, you know, again, they're looking at, you know, grand jury. Let's find out. Notice of and permission to inspect and photograph buildings or places which relate to the case. So telling them, you know, we want to go through, we want to photograph everything. You know, there's going to be, if they notice something or they want to talk about, again, just from that perspective, they're saying, hey, you know, if you have claims when you're talking about, you know, what we found, where you found it, a safe or anything, well, this is a notice of and permission to inspect and photograph. Any results or reports of physical or mental examinations, scientific tests, experiments, and comparisons made in connection with the particular case. Now, the one place that might, they definitely will have add-ons for mental examinations. You would have DHS. There would be statements there and stuff. And usually those things are, you know, where they redact an ongoing case with juveniles. You know, there would be a request for records for exactly what's stated there too, just to see how that comes across. It's fascinating as well when DHS gets involved. You know, there's another thing like a lot of people don't consider. Statements made by kids typically, you know, in anything else, like if it weren't your parents involved, kids have an adult there always present, right? You know, they have a parent, a parental entity. But if it's a statement regarding something that's happening, yeah, you know, with them, who knows? So they've got to get requests for that too. All results and reports of physical or mental examinations, scientific tests, experiments, and comparisons made in connection with the case. You also have their field or their lab tests. You know, when they go through and they look at substances. They're also going to have examinations if they've done follow-up examination for substances, including the entire BCA file regarding all laboratory examinations where they're bringing up performed on all items of evidence submitted to the BCA's forensic science laboratory or the file of any other facility utilized by the state to examine any item of evidence and the entire BCA or other facilities file on all substance testing performed at said laboratory, including the computer disk record of said testing and results. So, again, you can go, that's where people go after everything from chain of evidence, improper testing. Again, requesting the whole kit and caboodle just to see. Now, I'm wondering with some statements that Rekieta made, I do wonder if they're going to, that I get the feeling that they're going to look for something to fight in this. It's just, when you fight, as first-time offenders and everything else, you know exactly what kind of sentencing you're more than likely going to look at. Unless you fight. If you fight, then it opens up them. They get to come at you, and they get to come at you hard if they want to. And prosecutors don't like to. They don't like to go to court, to be honest. Forget the they don't like to lose. They don't like to take the chance that they can lose. Because your prosecutor offices, they love easy stats. We've heard many lawyers say that judges love deferment programs. True, but prosecutors love deferment programs too, because that counts as a win for them. That pads their stats. It's something that they can brag about. When you look at a lot of, especially small towns, again, you're talking the overwhelming majority. Like around here, prosecutors, we're talking about single digit court cases. They very rarely go to court. And if they have to go to court, they don't take that kindly. They come at you with everything that they can. And they make it kind of clear that's their plan too. So, and you'll see how that goes. You're further notified that the defense is hereby requesting the in-person testimony of all analysts who performed tests, the results of which the state intends to introduce in evidence at trial in the above entitled manner pursuant to, they give the Minnesota statute on that. Defendant is not waiving his right to cross-examine said analysis. So, again, if you're going to rely on any of that as well, everything they said, how they did it, we want everything. Defendant demands access to relevant material pertaining to the case to allow defendant to have reasonable tests made. If a scientific test or experiment of any matter may preclude any further tests or experiments, defendant demands reasonable notice and an opportunity to have a qualified expert observe the test or experiment performed by any prosecution agent. So, hey, we want to do our own testing. If we can't do our own testing, then we want to have our own people. We can have some kind of qualified expert there that observes tests, or they observe any type of experiment that goes on. So, again, looking for any kind of error whatsoever. The opinions of anyone who the state intends to call as an expert, the person's qualifications to render such opinions, and the underlying basis for his or her opinions. So again, who you're going to call in on these matters. You always have an expert to, in trials, you always have 1, 2 people, depending on how much stuff is done. They come in, they talk about what we found, how we found it. You trot in your police officers, you trot in your detectives, but oftentimes instead of having an army of analysts come in, you'll bring in an expert and say, hey, this is what we found. This is what this means. Instead of going in and giving some cold item a lot of people can't understand or relate to. They bring that in. So NCIC and BCA printouts of any records, charges, and convictions of defendant and any of defense witnesses. Again, background. Any material or information within the state's possession and control that tends to negate or reduce the guilt of the accused.
She's trying to take my basketball.
She's painting it?
No, it's all pink.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
Sissy was trying to take my basketball.
Okay, well, hey, go play with that. You know where you can play with it, right? With your room. But don't bounce it around anywhere else, okay? Actually, you know what would be fun with that? What? Bounce it off, the karate thing?
Yeah? You
can play with it with the karate thing, Oh. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, Dad.
She has a bouncy ball. Excuse me. Just been 1 second. I hear her come down steps, and she's like, when you heard her, hey, Dad, that was all the way from freaking like 6 steps away, plus across the room. But any background on people, whether or not they have charges or convictions, any material or information within the state's possession and controls that tend to negate or reduce the guilt. That's where we were, right here. So, if you have anything that you're sitting on, anything that, that might go to those matters. I figure there's certain items they would argue that were talked about almost outright. And I like the, weight of items, for example, including baggies and materials. You're going to get into all kinds of lives. What has been discussed here? Is there anything else, though? Anything that's out there? Again, they're just looking for anything at all. Any evidence or identification procedures not previously disclosed, pursuant to, and they give their statute on that specifically, evidence obtained as a result of a search and seizure, wiretapping, or any form of electronic or mechanical eavesdropping. So, if you all have been listening in any way, shape, or form, give me 1 second here. Kids were playing ball right on there, like, hey, wait a minute. I could hear them there. I don't know if y'all could hear them too. Umbrella Girl will be a very good expert witness. Nobody really. No. To be honest, there's stuff like that. Anything will be used. They tell you, when you get into anything, you have to, again, you never know what's out there. You never know how things were gathered, if there were items that we haven't heard about. So again, they're just looking for that. Are there any, were they listening? Were they wiretapping? Did you find anything that was the result of a search or seizure? Any form of electronic or mechanical eavesdropping. Now, I wonder, I'd like to actually know, they mentioned in the probable cause statement that they reviewed videos from X date to Y date, and they gave quite a bit of, I think it was from January too. So they said that they had reviewed quite a few items. I wonder if they kept surely they kept a list of all of those. So it'd be fascinating to see. We know the May 21st video, they used that as probable cause. But again, they said that they reviewed others. They just didn't give any specific dates or anything else. So, I'm just curious, like I said, what all they reviewed. Again, they reviewed Aaron's statements. Like, what all were they listening to? What all they're basing it on? Because again, they give you highlights. They were like, yeah, there was discussion about the utilization of substances. We observed what the detective felt was the utilization of substances, including a lot of statements. Again, almost all the statements themselves about what they observed came from the May 21st. Any confessions, admissions, or statements in nature of confessions made by defendants? Any evidence? Now, any confessions, admissions, or statements in the nature of confessions. Again, I wonder about the other people that were involved. What exactly? Or maybe nothing. Maybe they said nothing whatsoever. But I wonder. Again, we had so much information about Nick in particular in there. But I wonder if there were any other statements too. I also wonder, here's another thing. I wonder when they made a note, they specifically made a note about April with Nick saying that, again, she was just visiting. But then they made a note later on where Nick's wife said that she was a live-in nanny. I wonder how they perceive things like that, too. Any evidence against defendant discovered as a result of confessions, of admissions, or statements in the nature of confessions made by defendant when the investigation of the case against defendant, any indication procedures were followed, including but not limited to lineups, show-ups, or other observations of defendant, and the exhibition of photographs of defendant or of any other persons. I actually would like to know the date range, like when. We had the report from anonymous sources, and that's when they talk about firing things up. Were they ever looking before that? I'm kind of curious about that too. Because again, they talked about, well, we had an anonymous person come in. They talked to a detective that was familiar with because of swatting and other calls. Were they looking at other times? Notices of existence and identity of any other material or information to which the defendant is entitled, pursuant to the word and spirit of, again, you get your statute for there, or any other rule, pursuant to, the defendant hereby demands that the state promptly notify the defendant of any additional information. So, again, if they actually, if they investigate further, they talk to more people, there are new tests that roll in after the fact, whatever. Anything that you're allowed to have there. Material or witness subject to disclosure, discovered subsequent to the state's initial compliance with the rules of discovery. So you notice, is there additional information that is subsequent to initial compliance? All requests or demands made herein pursuant to, again, statute, and the holdings of State versus Lindsay, its progeny. Any oral statements made by a defendant before or after the arrest in response to an interrogation by a person the defendant knew or reasonably could have known was a government agent. So any statements, again, before all the way up to traffic stop, all the way through and beyond. Again, they opened it all the way up. Notice of and permission to inspect and reproduce books, papers, documents, photographs, videotapes, recording, and tangible objects which were obtained from or belong to the defendant, or concerning which the state intends to offer in evidence at trial, or which in any way concern the instant case, irrespective of the state's intent as to use in court of such items. So it's not just items they might produce. It's items, that irrespective of whether or not you're going to utilize those within the case. Notice of and permission to inspect and reproduce any and all witness statements that are in any way relevant to the instant prosecution. Notice of and permission to inspect and reproduce any results and reports of physical. Again, they go through. They're telling them not only do we want items available, not only do we want to look at them, we want to be able to reproduce them. We want to make copies. We want to have our own items with this. But it would be mental examinations, scientific tests, experiments, or comparisons made in connection with this matter, together with the original notes of the person who conducted said examinations, tests, experiments, or comparisons, written notice of any additional materials or information of the foregoing nature, which you discover from time to time before or after the trial of this matter, disclosure and permission to inspect any and all investigative reports prepared by the state of Minnesota, its agents or employees in the investigation of or evaluations of this case, together with the original notes of the arresting officers, including handwritten notes of witness interviews, if any. Said documents are necessary and essential to the preparation of a proper defense. Now that, again, all of this it's boilerplate, but a lot of people never really look like, they're basically saying, we want everything. We want every item that pops up. Hey, what's up, Scoo Scott? Thanks for the 5. No excuse for Nick. But what about April? Lived there more than 30 days. It's all fun and games till someone gets mad. I mean, that's true. Can somebody, there's this question that comes up oftentimes of, could they be used as a witness? They weren't charged. Well, they weren't charged then. That doesn't mean they won't charge or they won't threaten to charge. And they can't bring you in as a witness. Absolutely. They can absolutely want you as a witness. They could absolutely lean on people. They do it all the time. There's so many. There's so much there. I mean, hell, if they felt that Aaron was credible, they could bring Aaron in if they wanted to. I mean, that offer, and again, that assumes that there is a trial. This kind of stuff, it's basically, what cards are you holding against us? Because you go in, you try to exclude certain items, you can argue about that, or you can see, if something was, if it's damning. I don't want this to, I'm talking about it from their point of view. But again, it can go both ways. If something's very damning, but also, if it can be minimized or pushed out, you really know how hard you need to lean into that plea deal. The results or reports of any physical and mental examinations and of any scientific tests or experiments within the prosecution's possession, custody, or control, the existence of which is known or through due diligence has become known to the prosecuting attorney, and the prosecution intends to use the item in its case in chief at the trial. All material now known to the state or which may become known, or which through due diligence may be learned from investigating officers or the witnesses, and which is exculpatory in nature or favorable to the accused, and which may lead to exculpatory materials. Like, that's another thing that oftentimes gets left on the proverbial cutting room floor. Is there anything whatsoever that could be useful to us that maybe you're not mentioning? You found out, but yeah, is there anything that might be useful to us? Oh, by the way, thank you, Sandra D, for the gifted membership. I'll go roll through, too. Hey, Sue Scott, thanks for the 5. We are all responsible for reporting abuse. That's true. We have the neighbors, Imholtz, churchgoers, for the past year, until someone got mad. Yeah, well, the mandatory reporter, what they're saying is when they had a specific type of accusation that was reported to them, they're obligated under law to report it. Again, it's the same thing. We're working in mental health. If you're working in mental health and you have someone come in, again, there's a statement about about kids and neglect. You have to take that very seriously. There's been a lot of focus on that too, about mandatory reporters and whether or not, they might have known something before. Well, it doesn't go into the may have or guess. When somebody made a specific type of allegation, when you heard about that, again, if you do not report that, there's legal liability. Even if there's not legal liability, I mean, let's just be honest. Like you're saying in the Super J, and you're right. If there's a report of neglect, there's a report of abuse, yeah, you can be held liable under law, but I mean, it's disturbing. You don't want that to happen. So you make a report of that. Any and all drug or toxicology test reports obtained from a defendant, any other arrested or detained person, and any persons who were taken into custody by the state. Any and all social media interactions. Like, this is interesting there. Regardless of platform. So any platform whatsoever. Again, we know about YouTube. What about Twitter? Any other places that were discussed? I wonder, when you look at the detective statements, his high points, like the substance on the nose, that sounded like the trending material on Twitter. You can be like, oh yeah, I observed this. Well, people highlighted that too, and a lot of the high points that were being discussed, dates and more, the change over time in appearance and everything else, it sounded like the notation of Twitter highlights. So I do wonder if they were looking at the trending topic, and the topic did trend. It trended longer than a lot of time. I mean, it actually trended longer than like a Hollywood accusation normally will go. And typically, you'll have a window of about 3 days. That's your news cycle for trending, where something blows up. And it may hit other social media sites, but if we're just talking about one, like Twitter specifically, you have about a 3-day window. And that's a pretty long window. Normally a lot of accusations, unless something's added, will pop up and go away within a 24-hour time frame. But 72 hours. With Rekieta, you had over a week. And the reason for that, it was first the live stream pops up. You have additional discussion that relates to, the Aaron, April, So that gets those topics, it fuels it. The people who had video clips, those end up in trending. The algorithm prefers video clips anyway, but they end up getting pushed harder, more relevance, and more people start to notice it. It goes into norm. Then you had the arrest that came after, all of the discussion that came after that. Then there was talks about, again, body cam footage and more. So you were talking about a subject that ended up, really over a week. I said a week, but it was over. It was more like 2 weeks. It was as far as a news cycle of something. And it wasn't limited. In trending, if you look at something and it's only got like 1,000 mentions, like that's pretty weak. It's the lowest bar in trending. This stuff was trending against some heavy stories. The only thing that kept it from growing even more was all the decision about Donald Trump in an election year. When that came in, it flatlined because a lot of the places that were potentially looking into it, places that would have discussed Kyle Rittenhouse, they would have discussed other items, and they would have linked that in there too, and they would have fueled it, as far as media. Because anytime media drops a new article, if it's big, if it's from a big place, it'll fuel it. They switched off to another topic. They went hard at that's all they covered. So that's really kind of what killed the giant trending. But it's still been a discussion point, like a heavy one. Even now, it pops up periodically in the low trending. But regardless of platform, between the individual defendants and between defendants and potential witnesses, including those who provided base for any warrants. Now that's, like I said, it's interesting because conversations or interactions between people. But again, like that gets into everything. Any and all cell phone data or information obtained from the defendants. Any and all cell phone data or information obtained from any party related to the prosecution. Any and all forensic evidence obtained from the items seized from around the defendant's person or property, including from containers in which the seized items were found. Any warrants or petitions for a warrant to monitor the social media, internet activity, internet searches, and cell phone use and data of the defendant family members and associates. So, hey, were there any warrants, there, or were there any petitions for a warrant that go in and actually monitor all of that stuff too? Any and all non-privileged information contained in your file. Then they go for their legal matter. Minnesota law requires that you keep the defense aware of and provided with any and all discovery as above requested, obtained both prior and subsequent to the date of this demand. This demand is deemed by law to be continuing throughout the pendency of this matter. And again, this is this is Francis White. So the new lawyer that we were talking about there. Oh, man. Actually sounds like a pretty good lawyer. Yeah, again, it's boilerplate stuff. But yes, this definitely is what you want to go with. If you're going to... this doesn't mean that you're going to go through with a challenge to them. You're not going to say, take it to the courts. Let's go all the way. It's just a request to know everything that they're holding. Because again, if you go to court, what exactly are you going to be stacked up against? What exactly can you come up with a game plan for it? When I talk about that too, I'm just talking about the the reality, again, there are plenty of lawyers that can talk about particulars of what they think will or won't be challenged if you looked at that, if you did go through with it. But yeah, I mean, they want to know everything that they're up against there. If you're talking about a plea deal, too, what gets you your best plea deal? Again, is there something that could throw the entire thing out? And I'm sure there will be more matters that come up with this as well. But I thought this was interesting, but I thought even more than that, the body cam footage discussion, that was actually much more interesting to me off of that, because I kept wondering why $3,000 freaking dollars, Usually when you have, there's some exorbitant costs sometimes to body cam footage. But I mean, $3,000 is quite a bit, that's above and beyond. There's also, so this was interesting, in a different matter, there's a different case. Well, there was a trial on the 10th, and there was actually a Freedom of Information Act request for body cam footage. It's a different state, but still, just to see how this stuff plays sometimes. There was a request for body cam footage in the state of Arizona. And the state of Arizona was like, well, we have a 2-year backlog on all of that. So, it's kind of hard to get around to your request. And that's not legal. They're supposed to actually provide things within a timely basis. But it just shows you, I mean, there's so many different ways that body cam requests, they get handled, sometimes very inappropriately. Sometimes they definitely price it out of most people's hands too. But like I said, this just gives you an idea of where everything is. I'm going to leave it there. I'm reading some comments on that too. I'm reading comments for 1 second. See exactly what people... How much is 50 hours of video editing worth? Well, they're telling you that's $60 a freaking hour. That's amazing. Considering it's like, who's getting paid $60 an hour exactly? Oh, the state is. That's right. The state is getting paid $60 an hour because no damn technician or something that's out there. Like, I'd love to meet the technician that's getting popped $60 an hour off in Minnesota, because that ain't happening, And the removal of faces and stuff. I mean, you would think they would have some kind of software. People do this on the internet for fun. Fuck's sake, they do it for. I see clips all the time, where people take faces of whomever, they go through something, or for body cam footage. Like, there's so many channels out there that go through footage and they will redact items on their own, and they'll have it ready same day. They'll go through obscene amounts of material and they'll have it ready just in no time at all. They were saying 10 days. So yeah, we'll see exactly how that goes. Why did Nick toss everything away to enter the sector? Why associate with all the pay? Actually, okay, so when I first got to know like Nick Rekieta, the association with, again, I call it internet blood sports. I don't know what the heck, if it's the same term or whatever, but he was already in that. He was covering cases associated with that. he was covering, arguments with that. He would have guests on that would be from the farms. He'd have Josh Moon on, and he'd have a lot of different people there. So this association, it was always part of his channel. Now, as far as coverage change, I don't know. I don't know why the slide against not covering cases and doing everything. I don't know. I had not talked, and I'm not going to ask. I do not want to be subpoenaed for no fucking trial because I'm having private communications that relate to what happens in this. I've had generic messaging. In the you want to encourage people to get their lives together, regardless of this. Like, these are two different conversations, but you want to encourage people to get their lives to fucking together because it doesn't just benefit them; it benefits other people. You don't really want a one-off message, but I don't want to know the particulars of this fucking case because, like I said, I'll look at it just like anyone else. If he talks about it publicly, I'll hear it there. I've heard plenty of things in the aftermath, about what was going on. But for me, again, this is somebody we're not having heart-to-hearts or things like that. I've known for a long time, but that's from going on like flashcasts or going. And again, that's not a negative statement in any way, shape, or form. I don't want to know the particulars of why things slipped a certain way. Because, like I said, I don't want to fucking be subpoenaed. But that heart, the lean in there, that's been there for the longest. Because I know that because I never wanted to be. I've had positive interactions. Any interaction I've had, regardless of what anybody thinks about anyone, whether that's been an Ethan Ralph, Andy Worski, everybody, it's always been positive. I know enough people like Yellow Flash or Rekieta Law. I know people that have associated in internet blood sports, or at least dabbled in that. It popped up on shows. So I've had some interactions here and there, but that's just never been my thing. Yeah, to be fair, adults, they're consented. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about another topic. If that's your topic, there, okay, we're good with that topic by and large. Again, if people have any statement on that, hey, feel free, talk about whatever. But I want to hit a couple other things too. Give me a minute. I want to pull up the Chris Bouzy thing. I actually think this is kind of funny. The reason I think the Chris Bouzy stuff is funny is because the media, people think the media is going to be your pal. All these folks that dabble in, here we go, I'm pulling this up here. So Chris Bouzy, if you've never heard of this guy actually has been, his real claim to fame at first started with running a, I'm going to call it a website, Bot Sentinel. You can call it whatever you want. It's not he would say it's a way to spot bots and trolls, the bad faith representation out there. But really, what his website did is they looked at hashtags. Like if you hashtagged Trump, for example, and you discussed something related to that, you became targeted for politics. And then it became a social thing. It went into, he got paid from the Amber Heard team. he popped up in the Meghan Markle Netflix documentary. When he did that, by the way, he ran on his site, he ran a hate watch, and he only ran it off of two subjects, Meghan Markle, Amber Heard. He got paid by one of those for sure. And he shared articles saying that he got paid by Meghan Markle and their team too. So he was a media darling for the longest time. Again, you know, he had the quote-unquote right politics. He had the quote-unquote right social opinions. But, so you can see Dan Wooten. Now, Dan Wooten, he, I have some strong opinions on Dan Wooten. Dan Wooten, in my opinion, sold out being an independent journalist when he had that first sniff at some mainstream clout. He wanted to sell a book, wanted to pop up on shows. Boom, baby. He was all over it. And he went from having opinions that might deviate from the accepted to ones that just, they went right along with the mainstream. So he was talking about, you know, Meghan's ally here. So here he goes again. Meghan's ally, Netflix show star Chris Bouzy, claiming Catherine's faked this video too. And Bouzy's losing his mind about this. Now, this isn't the first person that turned on him in the media, by the way. And why would this be relevant? Well, not only did he have that, but he tried to build a Twitter competitor site called Spoutable. All these folks, they applauded it. Yes, we're going to have our own echo chamber there. It's going to be fantastic, right? The only problem was the echo chamber didn't exactly go the way that he thought it would. Why? Because of his ego. Anytime something came up, there's a lot of discussion about ego, in fact. A lot of the things that we talk about, it deals with the ego. In fact, this guy right here would be fascinating for somebody to go through and track. I mean, there's been discussions about his alleged crypto scamming. I personally think that Bot Sentinel was an absolute scam. It was held up as evidence. Then he puts together Spoutable, his website. He gathers money on it, and I'm talking about private donations of thousands upon thousands of dollars to put it together. Well, it comes out that he built this on an $89 Twitter clone that it looks like was Russian origin. So, whoopsie. So, you know, he started firing back at the media, being like, your obsession with Harry and Meghan and now me is disturbing. Not once did I claim fake photos. Not once did I say that. I said it had been edited. It clearly was. And no, I don't think Kate's a hologram. Unlike you people who you follow who believe Archie met her dolls. You know, again, I don't get into the whole discussion about all of that. I think it's funny. There's another one too that adds to this. I don't even give a shit, to be honest. This was funny, actually, to me.
What corn to pop?
There is no. Well, we have to thaw it out, so we'll have to put it out, and then we'll get some ready for tomorrow. Okay? I'll get some ready for tomorrow if you want. You want some tomorrow? You know, we have to get it ready for tomorrow. Yeah, it won't be ready tonight, but we'll have to, not to cook it. We have to get it out and get it prepared. Okay? And
I found this.
Okay, thank you. Give me that. All right, I'll see you in a few minutes, and we'll look over that and we'll get it ready tonight. Okay?
Okay.
All right, we can have some tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Corn on the cob. Whoops, I locked on that. I don't know why I locked on that for a second. Give me a minute. I hit the wrong item. Here we go. For the record, I've stated numerous times in Spoutable podcasts. So you know why the media doesn't notice that? Because nobody tunes into Spoutable. You should look up, if you want to see a cautionary tale of failure, Spoutable, that is a cautionary tale. It's one that you look at and you think, what the heck? Like, why? Why? But I've said numerous times in Spoutable content podcasts that I hope get a speedy recovery. Not once have I ever seen you show empathy or sympathy toward Meghan, or call out the vile trolls who attack her daily. Instead, you try to monetize those vile trolls. It's fascinating. Like I say, these people, they have fallen apart over the Meghan Markle mess. They've had so many of them fall out of favor. But Chris Bouzy's fall has been something to behold. I've never seen somebody that was, again, a media darling that had all the right opinions crash so hard within really 1 year's time. And also, actually, I want to add one thing here, too. Give me 1 minute. I wanted to add something else I thought was funny. So if people have been keeping up with this whole mess from Twitter, like where we're talking about falling out and political bullshit, the Mark Hamill stuff has been really funny to watch, too. Because Mark Hamill has been losing his mind. Now, I don't like the fact that Twitter likes have been hidden. I would rather Twitter fix some problems like prawn bots. You know, those things are every freaking where. Like, good Lord, they're in every comment. They're all over your DMs. I mean, they're everywhere. So I would much rather that get fixed. And I would rather, if they're going to hide likes, I'd rather things like that be optional instead of just switching everyone over at once. You know, I don't think that was a high priority considering, you know, there's like a dozen freaking things that Twitter was supposed to do. They skip over all these items they're supposed to do. But Mark Hamill I found really interesting because Mark Hamill, he's been protesting the Twitter-like thing. And I thought, isn't it fascinating? Like Mark Hamill, he feels that protesting Elon Musk and likes, that's okay. But when he had access to the highest political office, he didn't decide to protest the idea that the average consumer is being priced out of food. You know, those people are speed running toward bankruptcy trying to go to freaking the grocery store these days. And what's Mark Hamill do? He's like, oh, man, I love Joby-Wan Kenobi. And it's like, okay, man, that's amazing. I'm glad you can protest likes. That's easy. It's easy to sit around and, you know, thumb your nose at Elon Musk. It might have been a little harder to go in and actually bring up something that's a little more relevant. But then again, I guess you'd have to be in touch with people, like regular people that are out there. And yeah, Hollywood, I think they're as far from that as you can get. Now, the Gina Carano case, that's kind of interesting too. There's been some not correct reports about what's going on with that too. There was actually, give me 1 minute here. I'll pull up this statement. So they're trying to find out whether or not this case is going to go forward. And there were reports that this had cleared legal obstacle and it would now be going to discovery. You know, you had the Daily Wire report that, which led to a lot of other people reporting that was the case. And that's not the case. Hey, what's up, Lily? Thanks for the 5. Why is YouTube putting links to drag community up by the YouTube icon in the upper left of my YouTube videos? It doesn't appear to be an ad. because YouTube likes to maintain the quote-unquote correct politics. And, you know, I hear people say all the time, like, switch to Rumble. Rumble, dude. I had a problem with Rumble one time. I put up a video that would fall under fair use, and they got a report that, you know, that belonged to someone else. Someone put in a false report on that. What did Rumble do with that? They just took it down. They notify you through an automated process that you cannot go in and you can't comment on in any way, shape, or form. There is no appeals process to it at all. And they took material down. So I tried to contact them at first, and I couldn't get a hold of a human being. There was no way. Well, when Rumble first started out, they attached somebody you could talk to. There was a person that was supposed to help. So I contacted them. And I was like, you know, hey, this is a problem. You know, at least YouTube gives you the false, very false appearance that they're going to do something about this, or at least they'll look into it. And yeah, they strike that stuff down all the time, but at least they have a process. Are you guys going to have a process or anything else? And the person that I talked to was like, oh yeah, that's disturbing. I'm going to follow up with that. And nothing happened. I wrote back about it. Nothing happened. They weren't doing anything about it at all. It's just like it never happened at all. And I was like, man, this is a problem, because when you build up a platform, they will become, if they get built up, they'll become the next YouTube. They're striking people for that yet. But will they? And I mean, like I said, if they're just going to remove material, not even put in a process where you can appeal, and be like, yo, that's totally fair use. And that's a real issue. But the issue, more than anything, is there's not a human being that you can talk to about these problems. So I see people all the time that are like, let's handle problems here by switching over to this other platform. Well, if that other platform, they could at least, pretend that they don't do the same damn things. And they do. They pretend a lot of times. You know, if you want to be edgy and fucking say whatever in their chats, you can do that right now. Who's to say that'll last, by the way? But right now you can. You can't do all. It annoys me. The Rumble that annoyed me so much. It wasn't just an annoyance. It was disappointment. You know, because we do want a platform that'll be better. So. But why does YouTube do things like that? I think we all know why YouTube does that. Especially right now, I actually think, too, if people do like a video on it, I sometimes think that stuff's there to filter out channels well before the 2024 election cycle. You know, you're going to filter out specific channels and nail them for it if they complain. But with Gina Carano, got sidetracked there. There was this report, again, she's suing Disney because of, if you don't know about this by now, you know, the Gina Carano stuff was huge when it hit. And after the lawsuit was announced, that was huge too. You know, you had Elon Musk and Twitter, they decided that they were going to back litigation against Disney. Of course they did. Like, Elon hates Disney. I thought that would be fun to watch. But one of the biggest hurdles that you have is actually getting this to go to trial. You know, there's a lot of hurdles, a lot of obstacles that you have to clear. And again, the Daily Wire, they reported those obstacles had been cleared, and it led to all types of videos, so many people discussing the fact that this had indeed happened. And it 100% had not happened. Gina Carano actually put out a statement on that too, saying, I'm sorry, you know, this is not real news. The judge has not issued a ruling as of yet that I'm aware of. I've informed the Daily Wire news team. They will be issuing a correction. I wonder, by the way, issuing a correction included taking down their post instead of putting something up under it that said, hey, this is actually not real. This would indeed be an incredible outcome. And of course it would. I mean, when you get to the point where there are message exchanges inside of Disney, I have a really, I'm going to say I have an informed opinion that you're going to find some stuff that it goes well out of bounds. You know, there were items that were alleged in her filing, but beyond that, there have been sources that have talked about what was going on with Disney and the quote-unquote conversations behind the scenes and the things that they were doing behind the scenes were wholly, grossly inappropriate. You know, they violate law. I mean, she was targeted for having opinions. And it wasn't, you know, we want to fire her, or we don't want to renew a contract. We're talking about, you know, them talking about taking actions against her. I mean, you have Twitter. You have Disney employees that are in the aftermath of that are calling for her to be fired. People that are influential in the decision, what takes place behind everything. They're doing this publicly. They're signing off on items. They tell you publicly that they're targeting her. And all of this is a big no-no. But in order to get to that and to actually prove it, you got to get to the discovery portion of the case. The Gina Carano case would be a huge black eye for them, too. It would. It would look terrible for them. They can spin it in any way that they want. But the problem becomes, it looks bad for them in the public space, but it looks really bad for them when, you know, they decided to act against her for making certain types of statements, but they didn't go after her coworkers for making the same type of political statements, only geared to a different audience, you know, from the other side of the political aisle. That not only looks bad, when you think about working for a Disney, that's not good. I mean, that's not good at all. And right now, they are having a real problem with money. Their parks and recreations make money. But Star Wars as a whole it's a dead property. Like, it makes money, but it doesn't make profit. They don't make any money. Can you imagine running Disney Plus and not making a dime? Never made a dime off of that platform at all. You invest $11.3 billion into this thing and never make a freaking dime. I mean, if you worked at a place, man, if I lost 4 nickels, man, I might get fired from a place, you know. $11.3 billion. The destruction of freaking Star Wars as a commodity. You know, the cost of, right now they had the new show, The Acolyte, come out. And The Acolyte per episode costs over $22 million. To put that into perspective, that new Godzilla movie, the entire freaking movie was done for under $10 million. You could make Godzilla, not the newest, my bad. Godzilla -1. That's what I was going with, my bad. I said the newest, the newest, but it's probably the best new that's come out. Godzilla -1, amazing movie. Under $10 million. All the computerized effects and everything else. Every episode of The Acolyte, it costs over 2 Godzilla -1s. That's per episode. I mean, really, think about that. That's why they don't make any money. They have laid off insane amount insane amount of people. They've cut, almost 3/4 of the overhead. From that, they had a lot of bloated dead weight that was attached to Disney Plus. And they still haven't made a dime. They say that they're going to get into profitability to the point that the problems were so big that it led to an inner rebellion. The real rebellion isn't on the Star Wars front. It was inside of Disney with the shareholders. They almost lost control of their own shareholders. That stuff was wild to watch, too. I mean, for a hot minute, it looked like you were going to have a takeover. New management, they were going to force their way in and force Disney to change. They got shut down, but typically, and that stuff does happen. But typically, you and I will never hear about it. But it spilled out into the internet, into news cycles. It's just crazy. And anyway, let me look at some super chats real fast. Fallen Hero, thanks for the gifted membership, by the way. Sandra, thanks for the gifted membership. Appreciate that. K-Rab, thanks for the wonder if you'll bring in Ty Beard for CPS. Yeah, no, I don't think so. Actually, that's one thing. Yeah, I can say like Ty Beard definitely has been able to deal with CPS, but again, you don't necessarily have to bring in another lawyer. You have to have a lawyer that knows how to deal with that organization. CPS is its own. They have so much power. Like, people can't imagine that. They get to make a lot of their own decisions. Now, they'll adhere to a judge's decision, but they were brought in before. They get to make recommendations. And when they make recommendations, like I said, they have a lot of power. They have that type of power for a reason. And, I don't want any kid in CPS. I don't. I'm glad, like the kids we're talking about there are not in CPS custody, because they do damage kids even worse. No matter what a kid goes through. Like, I've seen so many cases where CPS has made things so much worse. They end up putting, especially if they end up putting kids in into the system. Not just monitoring. Monitoring, that's its own beast. But if they take kids and they put them in the system, they make it so much worse there. One thing with the level of scrutiny that a lot of this has, that'll make them play things by the book. And that's actually good. Regardless of any thoughts about, again, I want people in this case to get all their shit together and to do what's right, not just for them, but for kids and everything else involved. That's what I want. And I've said before, I know people want you to take a flamethrower to folks and burn them down, but that's not the best outcome. The best outcome would be to get your shit together. If you have problems, address that stuff. That's the very best, because CPS is going to be involved for the long haul, though, for sure. And I mean, again, they have a reason to be there. When there are allegations alone do not make something true. But when you have somebody that's had a problem, again, when they can't self-regulate, when they can't take care of themselves, then yeah, they're not going to be able to take care of other people. So what they're supposed to do, like in a case like this, is to make a determination of whether the environment is suitable for children. Are they going to get their the specific complaints that were made where they were not getting their needs met? So in the environment, can you meet their needs? And then with the the criminal complaint, they'll look at it, they'll talk to the kids about allegations. They'll talk to them about anything they've observed too, you know. And we may never be privy to that. Really, we shouldn't be. If it's done correctly, you'll never know what they said. And I say that that's not for defense of it. There's a point to that. Because kids in this, they are not party. They're victims in any hot situations like this. So they should be protected. I fixed that, by the way, when you asked. Thank you. Angela, thanks for 21. So I wonder if Nick is trying to find out if any tests were done. Kids' hair follicle tests, etc. Also, what they may be hit with. I don't think there would be any kind of tests like that. That's not typical. Like if there would be any substance, like the kids would. But I mean, again, there would be statements. They would also. You're just looking at everything. You throw out a net and you try to capture anything of relevance whatsoever. You know, you pull that back, and you see exactly what's there. What's this case built on? What exactly are they utilizing as evidence if you're going to win? Who's going to be a witness? I think that's a big one. You know, who are they? Who are your anonymous witnesses? Because again, there were 4. They listed 4 people. I got a kid. Just give me a second.
We ran out of tree sticks.
We ran out. Okay, we'll get some tomorrow. Okay, I'll get some tomorrow. Here, let me have. What is this? What is that? Don't put that in there. Here, take that up. Where'd that come from? Oh, is that one of the toy things for the toy guns? Okay. All right. Here, go upstairs. I'll be done in a few minutes. Okay. I'm almost done. Ran out of cheese sticks.
Don't call me Siki like Sissy.
Okay. Okay, I won't. Going up the stairs, she said, "Don't call me stinky like Sissy does." Like, okay, I won't. Now, I'm hitting these where these were noted. I want to put them in context. Sue Scott, thanks for the vibe. No excuses for Nick. What about April? Lived there for more than 30 days. It's all fun and games till someone gets mad. You know, we don't even know about any of that. Like, she hasn't made any. Well, I take that back. She has made like a very limited statement, but we don't know anything about involvement there. But yeah, I mean, anybody that's involved, including Aaron. I mean, Aaron about a lot of his comments, whether or not they're motivated by truth. Aaron's comments, he was right in it until he wasn't. You know, people have applauded, "Oh yeah, bravo, you got away from that." Now it sounds like he got kicked out. He got kicked out of the fun house or the tree house or whatever the fuck you want to call it. And then he got mad about it. And he went out and made statements then. He wasn't making statements before. He was living the hot tub life. He was indulging. He told you about, his own allegations about how he was totally down with things until he wasn't. And from his side, he's like, I removed myself. I was concerned with what's going on. Really? Is that really what happened, Aaron? Or was it the fact that, things... It sounds like somebody... again, kicked you out, and then, again, like the last chatter said, it's all fun and games until somebody gets mad. And that became probable cause, by the way. It became part of probable cause, what he was saying. Aaron would be somebody, again, I don't know what they would bring, again, like if he were brought up as a witness... I don't know how Cross would look for him, but he would definitely be somebody I would think they would eyeball for a witness. You know, they thought he was useful enough to be probable cause. They would talk to him and see exactly what he had to offer. Yeah, so right about the guy, Aaron. You know, no washing the Baldo. I don't want to wash the Baldo. That's gross. I don't even like that. The Baldo thing grosses me out, man. I don't even want to talk about the Baldo thing. That's like one thing. Like, I didn't want to go on shows talking about the Baldo at all. You'll notice, like, all that conversation, like, I nope the fuck out of that. Like, I don't. That's, again, anybody wants to do stuff like that, that's your prerogative. You know, you have conversations about whatever, but that's just not in my wheelhouse. I don't want to be involved in talks about other men using sex toys. That's just my opinion on that. I definitely don't want to, panel up and talk about other people in there and their male sex toys. No. Again, not my wheelhouse, not at all. And I nope the fuck out of any conversation about anything like that. Like I'm thankfully. But no, I do think that, I mean, when you're talking about, again, Aaron, there's been a lot of, he got a lot of attention for what he was discussing there. A lot of it. I just don't, I think all of that will end up, I think from the conversation that he messaged April's friend, I think that will be a conversation that'll blow up big time later on. I think seeing the you saw the comments that were aimed toward Andrew, legal mindset. I mean, you saw all that stuff, and that's somebody I made some harsh comments for sure. I haven't caught everything there. But that's in no way like what Aaron has said. So I think as far as that thing is going to become like a hot war later on. I think you're going to have both of them going back and forth very publicly sometime. I think that's going to get really, really heated and very, very interesting. I think then that's going to be the time to tune in because, there was I think it was a 19-minute clip that was put out of all the things that he wrote April's friend about that. I think it was 19 minutes. It was quite a bit. There was a lot of stuff in there. And again, if those comments are coming up while this is going on, then that's going to get, it's going to get spicy and it's going to be very public later on. Whew. Sandra, thank you for the gifted membership there too. Thank you. Sue Scott, thanks for 5. We're all responsible. Again, I'm just hitting these as they go through. We're all responsible for reporting abuse. We have neighbors, Imholtz, churchgoers for the past year until someone gets mad. Yeah. I think that's the case with a lot of people. I think that's the case with a lot of stuff, not just this, but a lot of stuff. Then there was the question of why is YouTube putting that up there? Donna, thanks for the 10. Side topic. Have you been watching Camelot 331 Racing? Yeah, yeah. He's been doing good. Has 2 top 10 finishes. Last night's race, he got hit, which disabled his car. He didn't get hurt. Yeah, I actually saw that. I didn't realize that he had been in a wreck until the aftermath, when somebody actually, they mentioned it. And I thought, oh, shit, is he hurt in that? And, he clarified that really quickly. No, I hadn't been hurt. But, yeah, I saw the footage on that. That was, I mean, good for him. Good for him to pursue. I like Camelot. Like, good for him pursuing his dream, too. It's been his dream out there. He's getting to live it. Like I said, props to him for that. Watt Studio, thanks for 2. Cecil likes to tell women he has the power of 2 inches. That does not surprise me at all. It doesn't. All right. But anyway, I'm going to call it here, actually. I figure, like I said, we'll find out more and more stuff as it goes along. I'm going to cover court documents as they come up. But unless there's something just absolutely wild, I've said what I needed to say very publicly about what I thought about everything else. And that was that. As court documents come up, but just I don't want to cover every fucking local stream. Or there are people that do that, and props to them. It is public; they can have at it, but that's just not fun. It's kind of that means I have to go through minutia and see exactly what's there. I have other things to do, but anyway, appreciate you folks. I'm gonna end here. Thanks.